friend. The mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Off work in the morning and up at the crack of dawn. All my money worries wherever I go come along. Worry's a bully, just won't let me be. Trying to keep me busy, tussling and struggling. No home since the fire, me and the ash can't settle down. Unsure of where I'm bound, so I sink another round. Placebo for pain, and there's no one for to blame. I refuse to accept that my work is all in vain. Worry's a bully, just won't let me be. Trying to keep me busy, tussling and struggling. Still always remembering when the going gets tough, that the labor of our love will reward us soon enough. Still always remembering when the going gets tough, that the labor of our love will reward us soon enough. Good morning, everybody.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Today, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I sort of do.
Wow, that seems a little, flexible and unknown and scary.
Well, so...
Are we just going to jump into the show? I mean,
hold on.
With no plan? Just let the wild wind sort of take us?
So, usually my process for preparing for the show, right, is to do nothing. Right? So I go through my week, and I do my thing, and gradually, bit by bit, during the week, what I need for the show is revealed unto me.
Mm.
Just a topic will come up that I'm interested in. I'll think about it some, jot down some notes. Something else will come in, and I'll be like, of course that connects, and then we'll do the show. And that happened this week, but usually, like I said, it's a collection of different things, like maybe Hades and Super Mario and how those go together, or the Amish and vaccines, or perhaps I will be given something about telluric currents and then Amelia Earhart, right?
Sure.
And so usually so I get these different topics, and usually by, say, Thursday or Friday, they will begin coalescing into a clear idea.
Yeah.
Right? So the last part of this hasn't happened yet for me. I've definitely been given the topics, but how exactly they fit together is not clear. But we're gonna step out on faith and just trust that they will come together over the course of this show.
I bet it'll happen.
Yeah, when the going gets tough, the labor of our love will reward us soon enough.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you do me a favor and write down 5 things?
Well, let me get my notebook ready.
You can do it on paper, or you can do it in that digital form.
Okay.
All right, and because these are the 5 topics that I'm certain were given to us to talk about.
Okay.
But I don't know how they go.
All right, I'm ready for number 1.
We have to hit them all. Gog Magog.
Gog Magog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The four turnings.
Uh-huh.
Esoteric Hitlerism.
Okay.
Argentinian economic collapse. Modern race relations. And universal history.
You know that's 6 things.
Yes, 6 things. And one bonus that may come in, but I'm not sure, which is occult lawfare. I doubt that one, but maybe.
That'll be the bonus the bonus topic.
That might come in. I'm not sure. You know, I've tried so hard to understand the sovereign citizen movement.
Right.
And I was like, this week we need to unravel that, but there's just so many layers of nonsense on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't draw out anything cogent.
That's the key to their success.
But the thing is, like, as the more I spend time around the sovereign citizens, the more I'm convinced that there is a kernel of there's a real pearl there in what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Like a real, they're on to something. But then on top of it is this pile after pile after pile of pseudo legalese.
Mm-hmm.
Like legalese is bad enough, and then it's pseudo legalese where there's a black guy in Virginia claiming he's part of the Moorish nation and shouting admiralty law at a cop as he's trying to pull him over because he's driving with a self-made license plate. And I don't know how to get past all of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Because the internet hates the sovereign citizens, and all they ever post is sovereign citizens losing their battles.
That's true.
However, if you search, and if you're around, you'll notice that there's also on the other side a smaller, granted, but nonetheless existent grouping of sovereign citizens somehow through some sort of ritualistic legal magic, just being I don't need a driver's license to drive a car, and the judge being yeah, you're right. That it's very strange, and it happens rarely. But and it's not, and see that filters down, these victories filter down, and people are well, I want to replicate that.
Right.
But then they don't have whatever the secret pearl is.
Mm-hmm.
And so they end up just going to the police officer, sir, this is not a car, this is a conveyance. And therefore not subject to driver's license laws. And the cop is here we go. Right. Because then the cop has to argue what a car is or get physical.
Right.
And he doesn't want to do either, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And but there is there's this, I think here's my advice to the sovereign citizens. I think that you're on a dead-end path with admiralty law. So, we are, what would you, do you know what our model of laws here is based on in the United States?
English common law.
Correct. What are other countries based off of? Do you know the other major system?
The Code of Hammurabi.
No.
Oh.
Although I guess maybe in a low-down sense.
Okay.
The civil law.
Oh.
There's basically civil law and common law. And law, there's 80-something countries with common law and 170 with civil law.
Okay.
And the big difference, the common law comes mostly from the English common law, and all of its, if you were ever a colony of England or closely related to one, you probably have the common law.
Gotcha.
And if you were ever part of the Catholic Roman Empire, or China, you have a civil law system. Okay? China and Japan basically have a civil law also.
Right.
And the main difference is that common law has a lot more to do with precedent and like previous cases. Whereas in civil law, it's very much like you just follow the procedures of the book.
Okay.
So in the common law, the judge has a lot more leeway with stuff. But they tried to tie in like that we're under martial law because of the gold fringes on the flag or something. There's like the gold fringes on the flag, and this is a symbol. And the thing is, if you go back in history and read, like they are correct that in the past, putting gold fringes on the flag was the thing that you did in a time of war or something. And so they say, isn't it suspicious that we put them on now? And then they try to pinpoint where it is. And some people be like, it was Eisenhower that put us in the martial law. And some people like it's Abe Lincoln. We never exited the martial law of the Civil War, they claim. And this is why they trample over constitutional rights, because technically they don't have to. They just don't tell you.
I mean, maybe something to that.
That's what I mean. There's always like a little bit like,
Yeah.
But, and then admiralty law gets into it because of the sea and the trading empire. But I tell you, I think you're going down the wrong end. I think rather you need to be looking at Lex Mercatoria, which is the law of the merchant. I've seen a few of the sovereign citizens, instead of going admiralty law, like, no, look, it's Lex Mercatoria. That's the problem, or that's the hack.
So the argument is that's the real law we're operating under?
Well, no. See, this is so you had English common law, right? But the thing about Lex Mercatoria is that you can actually pinpoint where it entered the common law system. It was around the 1600s, and a head magistrate named Lord Mansfield successfully fused Lex Mercatoria into the common law. And you could pinpoint when that happened. And they did this for just basic money reasons, which was that England was rapidly becoming a giant trade city. And when they would do these giant trades, people would come and go, and people would fraud each other in the ports. And the thing about common law is it moves very slowly. So if your case was going to take 3 weeks, but this guy involved was going to be on a boat tomorrow and gone to the New World, you'd never see him again.
Right.
And justice could not be done, and there was a lot of money lost. So, in the Roman Empire, which England had been a part of and still had vestiges of in their law, but not really active vestiges, there was this thing called Lex Mercatoria for the same purpose. When traders would go around, it was a way to very quickly settle disputes between traders, and basically involved each side having to, if you brought a case, you had to front money for it. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Because and that's the way you cut down on like fraudulent accusations. And so then you would put up money to bond the other guy so that he has to stay. He can't leave.
Yep.
Until this is resolved. But each day that it drags on, your bond increases because you have to compensate him if he's not guilty.
Gotcha.
And then you say, like, well, isn't it a little weird that now, like, it's like, well, you got to go in jail unless you got some money for a bail bond.
Okay.
And then you get to leave. And then you look into the bond stuff more, and the bond stuff has, it's weird. Like, there's like every court case has like a surety bond, and there's judicial bonds, and it's all this like money bonding the parties together in this strange way.
Okay.
And there's a couple of guys that have been like, listen, I was brought to court on like an insurance charge or something. I think that I was listening to this guy, and he said, I just didn't pay insurance because I didn't feel like I needed to. He said,
Respect. Yeah.
He said you're supposed to have insurance on your car, and he said, I don't feel like I need to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he just did not pay it. And so he gets brought before the judge, and he somehow, like the state, and in some way, in some cases, it appears to fall directly on the judge, the financial burden of these like cases in this. I don't quite understand it, but, and he like out bonded the judge, and the judge saw it and was like, I'm not taking this case. I don't want to, if this goes bad, I don't want to pay all that money. And so he just dropped it.
So the judge has to put up a bond?
No, it's not that, but see, they have to they have to compensate you. It's like, so he was telling this story. He's like, he got put in jail for 50 days.
Okay.
And I forget the exact specifics, but after they decided that he was in jail fraudulently, like they put him in there wrongly. And so he said, I'm sitting there with like the lawyers, and they hand me a piece of paper, and they said, on the piece of paper it says, this compensates you for the 50 days you spent in jail. And I was like, what compensates me? And they're like, that piece of paper. And you have to sign it. And he's like, I'm not signing it. I don't believe that's compensation for 50 days in jail. I want monetary compensation. And so then they went back to and there's this whole thing, they went back to the bonds or whatever.
Right.
And so there's like these glitches around this bonding stuff that can really derail a court.
Cool.
But like I said, if you try to look into it, there's so many, like, there's this group called the Moorish Nation in Virginia, which is a bunch of black guys that are sovereign citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they have rehearsed very long scripts of legalese, citing like, citing the Constitution, yes, but also citing like, the Westphalia Pact or something.
Old school.
Yeah. And they're like, and da 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 da, and therefore I don't have to. It's very like talking to a Catholic canon lawyer.
Oh, I bet.
where people are like, and then this is the canon law, and then you go, but that's not what it says now, and then they go back 1,300 years and like, see this one here, and then you say, but wait, what about this one 100 years earlier? And they go, but 500 years before that. And you're just like, ugh. And that's what it is like. And then I admire, I was reading some judges and police officers complain about them.
Mm-hmm.
And their main complaint, they said the biggest complaint is they just file reams of nonsense paperwork that we have to process. They just file. There's like every day, like they are prolific filers of complaints and claims, and and you read it, and it's like, due to the Articles of the Confederation, I don't have to have homeowners insurance.
Awesome.
And there's this whole thing, but I couldn't make heads or tails of that. I'm trying for you guys. Because I think there's a kernel of truth in there, which is like a kernel of truth, but it's a little more gnarled.
Mm-hmm.
A kernel of truth
makes sense.
But instead, I think we have to talk. We're going to talk more about Gog Magog and stuff. But you wanted to talk about something, I think, today.
This show's going to go on for 6 hours by the look of it.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Well, I did want to, before we get, even though we've already started, before we get started, I did want to give a shout out and a thank you to our new friend, Havarti McFly. He left us a great review on iTunes podcasts, comparing our show to a very satisfying and well-made sandwich.
Oh,
and,
that's very pleasant.
That really touched my heart. And I just want to say thank you,
I had
Havarti.
a great sandwich made by the Amish yesterday.
Made by the Amish. No kidding.
Yeah, I have to go through Amish country sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this little bakery there / deli.
Yep.
And you go in, and there's like a ticket, and you fill out everything you want on it, like your meat and your cheese, and you just put it over the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And they give you a number, and then you come back later, and there's your sandwich. It was very good.
Sounds great.
It was bacon, bacon cheddar sourdough bread.
Ooh, they make good bread.
They make good bread. So thanks, Havarti.
Yeah, thank you, Havarti.
Thank you.
The other thing we had a little outcry, a little request in the Twitters for some dating advice. So I thought we could start, a series of segments, maybe on dating advice.
Oh, is this like Dear Smokestack?
Well, there wasn't really a letter attached. It was just like, give us dating advice. So,
oh, okay.
So maybe if this is going to be a recurring thing, maybe some of you can write in with some of your specific questions in the contact form at mapsoc.org.
Yeah, you asked me if I wanted to help with this, and I don't think I have very good dating advice.
Why do you think you don't have very good dating advice?
Well, I never really dated.
Right.
I had like one girlfriend in high school for a little while. And we didn't really go on dates because we couldn't really drive.
Right.
At the time, very far. And then in college, I met my wife one day. We went out the next day, and then we've been going out ever since.
There you go.
So I didn't really have any.
So you're like a
experience.
Bunny rabbit that has never met the hawk.
Right.
And you've never felt the talons and the beak and the claws and the blood.
I never broke up with anybody.
Yeah.
The one, like I said, the girlfriend I was dating in high school, she just, one day during the summer, her family moved away, and she didn't tell me.
So you guys weren't that close then?
Well, no, I think she didn't want to upset me. Because she was sort of that way, like she would not tell you bad information and then she just vanished off the face of the earth. Because it was before cell phones. And I didn't have her new home phone number.
That's weird,
she was
man.
Just gone. She was just gone. And then I don't know what happened to her.
Were you sad? How'd you take this?
I was more confused.
Girlfriend
because
vanished.
at first I thought, they're just not home.
Right.
And then I saw other people moving in there, and I was like, And then there was no way to follow up at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just dust in the wind.
That's pretty weird dating career.
Yeah, so I don't think I would give you like my day. If you want to break up with someone in a way that doesn't really upset them too bad, just leave town forever and never contact them again. And then they'll be confused, like, are they dead? Did they get what? And then they don't really know.
You don't think that would upset most guys? Their girlfriend just disappeared.
I mean, is that worse than them coming up and being like, I don't like you anymore?
I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not worse. Yeah.
But like I said, that was my experience first, and then in college, I met my wife pretty like the first year of college, and then here we are.
Yep. Here you are.
Here we are.
So, well, lucky for our listeners.
Our listeners.
Our listeners.
Uh-huh.
I've been chewed up and spit out by the machine.
Yeah, you're like a veteran.
And have the scars to talk about it. But when we get to breakups, maybe we'll explore the leaving town.
Yeah,
approach. We'll just put
intense
that in
ghosting.
I'll put that in the notes.
Like, you have to even ghost your house.
Yeah.
Just.
It's commitment.
And then never, like, and I guess that was a long time ago, but no idea.
Right.
It could be dead. Could be in Morocco. There's no knowing.
Okay. Well, let's start on the. Do you want to start this now, or do you want to start this after the? We'll start it now.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe. I think doing dating advice after Gog Magog is gonna be.
Yeah,
weird.
it'd be a little weird. Okay. So I guess there's some preliminaries. This advice is mainly for men. I think that's the bulk of our listenership. But women may find it entertaining. And I'm gonna try to give it from my Christian perspective here. So this isn't like hookup advice. This is more find a spouse stuff. And so today is gonna be like freshman math in college. It's to get all the doofuses caught up. Okay.
Because we have some young doofuses that are listening.
Yeah, we have quite a few young doofuses
who specifically asked. They said, "I'm a doofus.
Right.
Can you help?"
Right. And so this is freshman math. We're gonna get you caught up on mindset. So Now, as Sumo pointed out, there are some people that just have a very easy time of it, and
well, the trick to that is you got to be really handsome,
right, which Sumo is,
and tall,
that helps a lot.
and
yep.
you need luscious, long locks of hair.
So this advice is really not for people that fit that description. This is for the rest of us.
My hair has gotten so beautiful
that
lately.
have some. I know. I saw a picture. It was great.
It's going so long.
You sent me that picture, and I thought he looks like a deranged holy man.
I know.
Sort of
well, I
person.
hadn't combed it or anything at that point, and I was sitting in sawdust. But yeah.
Right. So that advice, if you have long, luscious hair that women just want to touch all the time, this advice is not for you. This is for if you haven't had a lot of girlfriends. You've maybe had some trouble forming a relationship. Maybe you're just dealing with some big feelings about some girls in your life and don't know what to do about it. This is probably going to be a little bit more your speed. So the 101 section of this, part of it is just we got to get your mindset right, okay? And most of you are not like Sumo. You're not the bunny rabbit who never gets to meet the hawk. Okay, you're going to get rejected and you're going to suffer a lot.
Right. You're going to suffer.
You're going to
suffer for your lack of attractiveness, really. Which is what God intended.
So much. But here's the thing. If you got to use it and it'll make you stronger. So just before you try to start figuring out your strategy, just assume you're going to get rejected. And it's going to hurt you, and you're going to be sad. Right. And we'll talk about how to handle that. But just get it in your head. That's part of the game. If you wanna get strong, you got to go suffer in the gym. If you want to learn to fight, you got to get punched in the face a lot. And if you want a wife, you're going to have to get beat up and rejected, and hurt some other people, in ways you didn't want to. So get that in your head.
You're gonna have to cause a lot of broken hearts.
There's gonna be carnage. It's gonna be carnage. Second thing about mindset and rejection. If you get rejected, that doesn't mean that you suck or you did anything wrong.
Right.
That's not really an indicator of anything. All it means is that it's not gonna work with that girl right now. That's all rejection means. You can't really use it to come up with any sort of valuable information about yourself or your strategy. Sorry, it's almost just like pure meaningless pain.
And also, maybe just ignore it and keep going. I had a friend who was very short and dumpy, right? And he was trying to get this girl that he worked with, and she ignored him and actively said she hated him and said, go away, for like 4 years. Yep. And now they're married.
Wow.
Because he was just like, every day, he's just like, I'm still here. Yeah. And she was getting a little more desperate as every day passed.
That's great.
And so eventually she settled. And that's what you want.
No, okay. But there's a point there. Is like rejection doesn't even mean quit. Like it literally doesn't mean anything. Now, here's something that does mean something. If you find yourself pining over a woman, having big feelings, and this is a one-way relationship, like she doesn't know how you feel, she doesn't reciprocate the feelings that you have for her, she doesn't reciprocate them to you, and you're all emotionally wrapped up and encased in carbonite in the friend zone, that does mean that you suck and that you are wrong. And you need to not do the things that got you into that situation. Because once you get into that situation, you don't have a lot of hope. It takes like radical open relationship surgery that may kill the patient to get out of that. So don't get into that situation to begin with. And we will get into that a little bit later. But that's something, if you say, like, that's me, Smokestack, I get into those, I pine after women silently, and I think about them all night, and then I never do anything about it, and I'm all emotionally wrapped up. This advice is for you, because that's we got to get you out of that. So, stay tuned.
Do you recommend them going to the girl's house at night with a boombox?
No.
And
In
standing
fact,
in the lawn?
all the dumb stuff in movies of guys like working up the courage to confess all their secret feelings and like laying it all out there in some epic speech, and then the girl like swooning and be like, "Oh, Frank, I didn't know you felt this way, but it's so beautiful. I think I love you, Frank." None of that is real or ever happens.
Okay.
It's totally fake and gay. So that is not the way to get out of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do find yourself in that position, we're gonna talk about how to take a shot, but you just need to know it probably will fail. It doesn't always fail, but you're sort of like way back in the backfield. Okay. So more mindset here. Another thing you got to understand is that all women are crazy. Their behavior will confuse you. That is normal. Don't get frustrated about it. Kind of the deal is find some crazy that you can work with.
Right.
Because crazy is just, I mean, they would say the same thing about us because we don't talk the same language. We don't have the same expectations about relationships. Everything we do, they think it's crazy, and everything they do, we think it's crazy, and that's just the way it happens. So don't get frustrated by it. However, here's some crazy you don't want. If a woman is giving you some very clear signals of interest, and then you respond to those signals, and then she responds with something very that isn't the way it should have gone, maybe that's a moment for pause, because some women don't understand signals. I've dealt with this. It's okay. It's not their fault. They just got to figure out that they're dealing with nuclear weapons and how to wield them properly. So that's the kind of crazy that maybe give that one a little pause. But other than that, expect craziness. And I think the last thing about mindset that guys in this particular category need to make an adjustment for is pursuing hotness as hotness. Okay?
Hotness qua hotness.
Yes.
Okay.
Hotness does not necessarily equal attraction. Now, is it thrilling to date a 10? Yes. It is thrilling to date a 10. For a couple of weeks. It is awesome. And then after that, it all kind of, you sort of end up in the same boat no matter who you with. And it's, your attraction is based on conduct and character and outworkings of your regard for each other and self-respect. And I think, a lot of that self-respect comes in, with that comes fitness and how they dress and how they comport themselves. And you want to be attracted to your spouse. Don't get me wrong. Like, that's important. But there's a lot of guys out there who are just like, I want to get me a cute anime girlfriend. And her eyes need to be 4 inches in diameter or bigger. And your brain is warped from watching anime and porn, probably.
Well, yeah, okay, but is it the man's duty to then right his brain, or is it the woman's duty to conform her body to their anime expectations?
Well,
and become a cartoon character.
I mean, they are making some pioneering strides in body modification surgery, so maybe this will be a more pertinent question in the future.
I actually think that Western media and cartoons is altering women's image more, like the Frozen ladies.
Mm-hmm.
Elsa and Anna's eyes are huge.
Yeah, they're
like
massive.
alien eyes.
Yep.
And then women, they're trying to like do all these makeup things to make their eyes look bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that I mean, it works okay in a cartoon, but on a real person, it's weird.
Yeah, it is starting to get weird.
Like Pixar is doing more to mess up people's attempts at beauty than anime.
Right.
I think. Because anime, at least, it's like maybe your head is weird, but you're also like ripped and know karate.
Yeah.
So that compensates.
No, don't let your daughters watch Disney movies. That stuff is toxic. But anyway, so that covers mindset. I think the most important part of getting your mind right is embrace the fact that you're going to suffer. Because
embrace
the
fact that you're going to suffer.
You're going to make other people suffer, right?
Right.
So just don't expect that it's going to go well and you're going to like confess your feelings to your true love and she's going to just, start dropping eggs and fall in love with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not going to happen. You're going to have to get slapped around. Okay. The next part, a thing I want to talk about here is you need to order your life in a way that's advantageous to you. Okay? So this is still more 101 stuff. This is getting slackers caught up. Okay?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You need to be part of some sort of a community. If you are spending most of your time online, and internet's great for some things, but for the most part, it's non-geographical. And so your odds of meeting somebody on the internet, unless you're using a dating service, which I don't know, we'll talk about that more later. I'm not big on those.
I don't think people
slim.
are big on those either for actually finding someone long term.
Yeah, it's actually
it doesn't appear to be working for a lot of people.
It doesn't really work. I know one person that met their spouse through a dating service.
You got to meet IRL, as it were.
And they're doing well. They're doing well. Like, it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't.
It does happen, yes.
But as a strategy, nah. Get off the internet. That's marketing. Okay, people are trying to sell you things. They're trying to sell you a solution to your romance, and online is not where you're going to find that solution. By and large. Yeah. Okay, so you need to be in
unless
a community.
It's here on this show.
Right, because we're giving you the hard, nasty advice. And it's free, too. Right? Just because we love you. Right? So, you need to get in a community. So, not just don't date online, but you need to not spend so much time online playing games or whatever that you are, that time that could be spent doing things with people with whom you share your values and interests. If that's cutting into that time, if your online time is precluding that, because I know a lot of you guys are in school and all this stuff, you don't have like unlimited free time. So you're going to have to make some decisions about how you want to spend your time and how you're going to order your life according to what your goals are. So if your goal is I'm going to get me a good woman, then you're going to have to make some life changes to make that happen. And one of those is get off the internet and go out and do something. Especially if you're at school right now, if you're school age, college, dude, there are so many awesome things you can do, like outdoor clubs. There's like 10 bazillion clubs, depending on what you like to do, where you can go do that with real human beings, some of them female, okay?
Then, like you could go kayaking.
Oh, man. And then if you're a Christian, there's every college in America has 20 bazillion, Christian college student groups and events and whatever. Like, you just have to go to them. And don't just go to one and say, oh, I didn't meet anybody, that sucks. Go and try to invest and become a part of that community and go repeatedly and keep showing up and get to know people. Like, all that stuff has to happen before you start reaping the rewards of meeting some girls. Okay? So you got to make a decision and reorder your life a little bit. Okay. The other thing you need besides community is you need some bros. All right? If all your friends...
Wingmen, maybe, you would say.
Wingmen, yep. But it's more than that. It's more than wingmen. If all your friends are girls, that sends a weird signal whether or not it's true. It kind of signals...
It says that you're a creep or that you're gay.
Yeah. I mean, kind of.
That's what that means, yeah.
Or you're like a player, or you're like a game of male. Okay? That's sending a social dysfunction signal if all your friends are girls. You need some bro friends, okay? You need to do stuff with them. You need to build the man or bund, as they call it, okay? Because you're going to need that when you're dating. You can't just date a girl and not have any bros. Your bros are your sounding board. They're, they're going to give you advice. They're going to be giving you some camaraderie and confidence. It's like, I personally am more confident as a person when I'm spending time with my bros, okay? I'm doing stuff with them. We're working on things together. You know, I'm making podcasts, right?
Right.
That's good. Like that, males working on things together, you need that in your life for a lot of reasons. And especially trying to build relationships with women, you need the male friendship, okay? That's
if for
critical.
nothing else, just so you have something to talk about.
Yes, yeah.
Like, what do you do? And then you have something you can answer.
Right.
Like, I do some things.
This is what I did with my bros. We have a flag football team we play every week. Come watch us and you know, watch me dominate some other dudes and demonstrate my abilities.
Or you could be like, what do you do? It's like, I'm in a secret terrorist cell trying to take over Suriname.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, wow, that's amazing.
There's probably some girls out there that would really be impressed by that.
Oh, most of them, I think, if it was successful.
Yeah, yeah. And then you'd be the king of Suriname also, which is a bonus. So the other thing that having some bros does for you is it gives you opportunities to demonstrate a few very important qualities. And I would consider these the fundamental qualities that women are attracted to in a man, whether they admit it or not. This has just been my experience. This is all just smokestack, you know. This is what I've found to be true.
Right.
Those three qualities are leadership, courage, and bonus points for dominion. And we'll get into that more probably next week.
But long story short, that's where you have a ballot counting software system.
Yes, right. You need to be bribable. You need to have good hardware, many papers. Yep, Dominion.
And servers in Germany.
Yep. But leadership, you know, good looks and great personality are all awesome and all, but they don't pay the bills, right? Things like leadership and courage demonstrate that you can be a good mate, right?
Right.
And so when you are interacting with other men, you're organizing events and working together on things, you're taking on challenges, that demonstrates that you have some leadership abilities and you have some courage. And this can also be brought into dating activities. You don't just want to go to the coffee shop. We'll get more into this in the like how to go on a date thing. But your time with women, you want to structure it so that you can demonstrate your leadership ability and your courage, okay? Because those are the things that are going to get you noticed by women to make you attractive to them at like a very foundational sort of level, okay? And the last part of this, which I think this would probably wrap up today with maybe a few extra notes, but the last part of this is kind of obvious, but it needs to be said. If you have a problem with pornography, you need to get that handled before you start trying to date anybody, because that is going to cripple your mind and make you into a gargoyle, okay?
Right.
And you have really no business pursuing a real woman if you're having artificial relationships, one-way relationships with scads of women all over the world, right?
Yeah, it's going to really warp your sense of what's appropriate.
Right.
Or to be expected.
And you know, if you have some bros or a mentor that can help you with this, that's who you should talk to. Right? You don't talk to your girl about your porn problem. You get some help from your bros or your pastor or your mentor or whatever.
You could say, listen, we're going to go kayaking, but I have to watch porn first.
Right. It's not going to go well for you.
Yeah.
Right. And if
caveat, unless you're extremely handsome.
Right. Yeah. Maybe
most things will work if you're like Chris Hemsworth, the guy that plays Thor.
Right. Yeah.
Most
he can
things
really
will work.
Do anything he wants.
Yeah.
But so you're not him.
But you could try to be more like him.
Yeah.
In your look status.
Yeah. I mean, you could take enough trend to kill a horse.
Yeah, you could. And maybe you should.
Maybe that might get you somewhere. I guess that would be an alternative strategy. I personally wouldn't recommend it.
Right. Maybe you should take trend. Maybe you should. I don't know what else you could do. You can't really. At this point, people can't make themselves taller via surgery.
I thought we could do. I thought they had leg stretching.
Yeah,
things.
but I mean, then you can't really walk properly. It sort of defeats the purpose.
Right. Yeah, we don't want that.
So, yeah, maybe try Trin.
Yeah. But in closing, a few sort of if you're stuck in the friend zone right now or you got big feelings for a girl, I'm gonna tell you a couple things. Don't do. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do these things. One is don't be sad on the internet, in public, in front of God and everybody.
Oh yeah, I had a friend that did that for a while. I was very like, okay.
Don't. That is like you might as well pour a bucket of vomit on yourself.
Here's the thing: no one cares about if people will care about a woman suffering. No one cares about a man suffering.
Right. So don't share it. Your bros care. Here's the thing: your bros care.
Yeah, but the public just go die.
Right. So
that's what they would say.
Talk to your bros about it. So when I got my guts ripped out in the worst way possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's what I did. I first made that mistake. I got on Facebook and I was sad, publicly sad on Facebook for about 2 days. And then I realized what I did and I deleted everything and I deleted my Facebook account because I realized the horrible error I've made. And then I talked to my bros about it and got some real like support and encouragement. And then I got in my car and I drove out into the desert across the country for like 10 days. And I howled alone in the desert. And I grew hair all over my body. And my back was wet with the dew of the morning. And I did that. And I lost the ability to speak English. And I went through all that out in the desert. And then eventually the Lord allowed me to come home again, and it was okay. That is a more productive way to handle big feelings, sadness, and rejection than being sad on the internet.
Yeah, I would say don't even be sad on the internet if you have, like, cancer. Because no one will care.
Not on the internet.
Well, I mean, not even on your Facebook group. I mean, they may give you a sad face.
Right.
And be like, oh, praying for you, but they're going to be secretly like, loser.
Right.
He's got lymphoma.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people just don't care. I mean, I guess it's permissible in public for a man to be sad about someone they love, something bad happening to them, but not themselves.
Right. Yeah. You cannot be sad for yourself.
Yeah, so don't be sad. Just go die instead.
There's kind of a related point. As I was preparing the notes for the show, I did check a lot of this by my wife. And she does, Mrs. Smokestack, aka Muffins, does sign off on most of this advice with a few caveats. But one thing I sent out to my focus group, I've got my focus group of well-adjusted, married people that have success in relationships. And one thing I said, I sent this out and I said, what do you think about this statement? And the statement is, don't tell a girl how you feel. Tell her what you want if you're pursuing dating her. The point being that girls don't really want to know all your feelings. They say they do, right? They say, oh, please talk about your feelings. It's so sexy when a man talks about his feelings, right? Is in touch with his feelings. They don't mean the deep turmoil of your soul. That's not what they want.
Right. They don't want to hear about your existential crisis and your concerns that maybe the universe is an infinite nothing expanding into more infinite nothing.
And they don't want to know that you feel lonely even when you're with people because you've been alone for so long. Like, they don't want to know all that. That's not what they're talking about. What they want is, what are your feelings about me? Specifically, what are your intentions and desires? So when if you're gonna go to your crush, right, and you're gonna try to bail yourself out of the friend zone, the thing not to do is to write a big email or whatever, or have a big speech about all your secret pain and longing and loneliness and giant feelings.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do is state your intentions and your desires, right? Because that is action oriented. Right? They want to know, the only feelings that you need to be sharing with them are those which are directly related to your intentions and desires and the action that you want to take. This is a broader point of that.
is people are confused. Men are actually the romantic ones.
It's true. Yep.
Women are very practical.
Mm-hmm.
And they disguise their practicality in concerns about romance.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's all just like what's going to happen,
Right.
what can happen, what are the possibilities here. Whereas men are more like, men are the only ones that think about what if the Habsburg Empire never collapsed.
Yeah.
With like wistful dreams.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Men definitely have much bigger emotional energy than women. This is something I've concluded. Women share much more readily and are allowed to share much more readily their emotions because their emotions are not as big and they're easier.
Their emotions are stupid.
They're not stupid.
No, they are. Their emotions are like, I'm upset because I have so much to do and I'm stressed.
Okay.
Everyone's like, sorry. And then your emotions are like, we have to get to Mars or the species is going to be destroyed by a meteor.
Yeah.
and then women are like, space travel.
Yeah, right.
Men aren't. It's not socially acceptable for men to talk about their emotions because men's emotions are far more intense.
Yeah. Yep.
And far more big and like concerned with like God and the universe and the eventual fate of humanity.
Yep.
And women are like, I'm stressed at work. I need someone to tell me it's going to be okay.
Right. And the key information here is that men are equipped to intake and process and share in the emotions of women. Women are not so equipped to handle the emotions of men in the same way.
Right, because again,
and
women's emotions are much smaller and of less consequence.
And some women are, but most women are not aware of this fact, at least at dating ages, right? They don't know what's going on, and they don't need to know. It's kind of like if I had double knee surgery next week, my wife, because she loves me, would help me get on and off the toilet, right? It wouldn't be the most romantic or appealing moment for her, and I'm not going to be like stud husband in her eyes during those moments. But she will do it out of love and duty, of course. She's a wonderful wife. All right, if you, single man, have knee surgery and you need help off the toilet, you ask your bro to help you. You do not ask the girl that you want to date. Okay?
Or just do it yourself. That's what I did when I had knee surgery.
Or just do it yourself.
They make these big braces. You can just lock your knees straight. So what you do is you lift yourself up with your arms, and then you hold yourself with one arm, and then you click your brace into place so that your knee can't bend.
Yep.
And there you go.
Yep. There you go. But I guess the point is doing a feelings dump on a girl that's not what you're supposed to do. So share the big crazy feelings with your bros, all right? If you talk to a girl and you want to like tell your crush how you feel, it needs to be very circumscribed to what you desire. So it would be something like, listen, Stace, we've been friends for a long time. I'm not really getting what I want out of our relationship, and I want it to change. I want you romantically, right? I don't just want to be your friend. So if we're going to keep spending time together, that is what I'm after, and that is the way I'm going to act. Okay? Because you're a very special girl. I think you're incredible, and I'm not satisfied anymore just being your friend. So now Stacy has a choice to make. And you can butter it up a little bit. And the buttering up part, the talking about you're so special and beautiful, that is what when the girls say feelings, that's what they mean.
Yeah, it's like
they want to know
are solipsistic.
The positive feelings that you have for her.
For them. Not the negative ones. When they say your feelings, that translate that as I want to know your positive feelings about me personally right now.
Right. But the statements I just made, are statements of this is what I want. So you state what you want, and it's up to her to give it to you or not. Like, she's got to make a decision. Does she want to give it to you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in the friend zone, that probably won't work, but it's a good thing to just do it anyway, because you need to be honest with her. If you care about her and you're lying to her by omission, that's not good either. So just be honest, but be honest in a way that is going to be successful, has a chance of being successful. Because if you just unleash the torrent, she's going to get grossed out and not want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, just remember that women never make anything.
What? They make baby.
But besides that, but I mean, like, no, the reason women don't invent anything is because they don't have any big dreams. I mean, seriously, women. There's never been a woman sitting around in her village in Indonesia that's been like, what if humanity could build a Dyson sphere?
Yeah,
it's never happened. The men in the Indonesian village will sit around and do that, and they'll be like, one day a Dyson sphere.
Yeah.
But the women are like, what if we had a slightly bigger basket to put the things in? And then if you give them the bigger basket, they're like, what if we had a better mattress? Women are insanely practical to a degree that men don't understand.
Yes, they are very practical. Yeah.
And that's okay. Someone needs to do that. Otherwise, things wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? They channel men's energies into more practical concerns.
They're the executive officer.
Right. Like, I started into physics because I wanted to do time travel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that practical? Probably not.
No.
Right? And then so your wife leads you like, okay, that's fine. Let's go to something a little more practical.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a necessary function. But you have to remember, when women talk about your feelings and your dreams, that they're talking about, like, what size basket are you thinking of? Not like, oh, what if we had like a wormhole machine? Right.
Your wife probably isn't going to help you build a time machine either.
Yeah, the women don't. Just remember that women have very limited horizons. I'm not being misogynistic.
It's good. Those are good features. You need that in your life.
You need that in your life. They do not. Yeah, they do not. And this also, I mean, I don't want to say this is why women also shouldn't vote, because it's not what it is. I'm just saying that women don't have big imaginations. They just don't. I mean, it's just not. It's just in general. Yeah. I'm sure the women listening are all exceptions. Everyone listening is always an exception. But in general, women are just like, what if we had, like, a woman's thing in politics is like, what if I had more of same, but it was slightly better? Mm-hmm. They're never like, what if we had something radically different? Yeah. So, anyway. Like, even women doing communism isn't really... It's so dull these days. Because most of the Marxist movements are led by women, and then when you ask them, like, they're like, I'm a Marxist. And he's like, what do you want? It's like, well, I want a good job with health care. Yeah. It's like, that's just now, but plus a check. Like, yeah, Marxism. Like, that's not really what... Anyway.
Well, I think we could probably wrap up Dating Advice episode 1 here. We covered mindset, and we covered how to order your life in an advantageous way.
Correct.
So I'll probably put the notes up on mapsoc.org on the show notes. You guys, some of you don't know that I write notes for each show, and I put them up on our website. So if you're looking for something like a book or a video that we referenced, it's probably going to be linked there. Just a pro tip. And I think next week we're going to talk about how to be appealing.
Well, that would be a bro tip, maybe.
Yeah, and then how to...
Bro tip.
A bro tip. Bro tip is, show notes are on the website. So we're going to talk about how to be appealing, how to make an approach, and how to get dumped well. Because you're going to get dumped.
What you're saying dovetails well into what I'm going to talk about.
Awesome.
Because Gog Magog is obviously the legendary giant of Welsh mythology.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course.
Accounted
Everyone
for
knows
in
Yep.
Joffrey Manmoth's History of the Kings of Britain, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And how do you get giants? Well, women have sex with demons.
Ah.
Which is it's sort of a relationship thing, isn't it?
I guess that was a practical calculus on the woman's part. She's like, I want giant baby. How do I do?
Yeah, ladies, if you would like to produce enormous, often hideous and grotesque cannibalistic offspring, all you have to do is reproduce with a demon.
It's like the bigger basket, but it's bigger bebe.
Correct. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
This is why women are so easily drawn into witchcraft. Because the demon's like, I will give you bigger basket. And they're like, well, for that I will sell my soul.
Mm-hmm. You gotta protect your ladies from the guiles of witchcraft, the temptations. Right. You have to do that. Manly duty.
So I know that Gog Magog is supposed to be in this show because Gog Magog is a rare word, right? It's... Well, you don't go to Aldi's and hear the guy behind the meat counter say Gog Magog to his partner very often. Right? And yet, 3 times this week, from 3 separate sources, all unsolicited, the word Gog Magog was spoken to me.
That's weird.
I know. It's like, Gog Magog. I'm like, okay. And then the next time, like a few days later, someone was like, oh, have you ever heard of Gog Magog? And I was like, And then, like on Friday, someone was like, oh, and Gog Magog. It's like, okay, I'll talk about Gog Magog. Chill.
I think you run in some weird circles, though.
Not really.
Really?
Not really. I mean, I don't. It was like a person like in a work environment.
So these weren't your time machine bros.
No, these were normal people.
Okay.
Right. So, in Welsh and English legend, Albion, which is the traditional name of Britain, right? Mm-hmm. Female refugees from Troy, when Troy fell, came to Albion in the distant past. And they found no men there. So, naturally, they had sex with fallen angels.
Sure, like you do.
And produced a race of giants, who then controlled Britain. And then later, when people moved to Britain, they would rule over them. They would be very morally deficient to the point of like cannibalism, eating the people. And they'd be very sexually weird and deviant, the giants. Right? Which is how giant stories always go, pretty much, in history. So, but anyway, Gog Magog was then defeated by Cornelius, a friend, one of the companions of Brutus of Troy, right, who was a descendant of Aeneas. So in this story, both Gog Magog and the guys that beat Gog Magog are Trojans or descendants of the Trojans, right?
Right. I think maybe that's a point to clarify. Maybe all our listeners don't know, but sort of the history of the kings of Britain puts forth the idea that Greeks and Roman type dudes were the original Britons that brought, the new. I don't. How would you even say that what they did? They went to England from that area and sort of built what became Britons, who were eventually defeated by the Normans and the Saxons and all that.
Right. It's an old school medieval we was Mediterraneans.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? But anyway, Cornelius, I can never say his name right. Cornelius, friend of Brutus of Troy, he beats Gog Magog in a wrestling match and throws him off a cliff into the sea.
Based.
And after they do this, Brutus becomes the first king of Albion of Britain, founds a city on the river Thames called New Troy, which later becomes London. Okay, that's the story. And that's what Gregory of Monmouth records in his History of the Kings of Britain. Now, of course, Gog Magog is clearly a combination of the terms Gog and Magog.
From the Bible. That's in the Bible.
It's also in the Quran. It's also in Alexander the Great legends.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, Alexander the Great was said to have built a wall in the Caucasus Mountains to hold back Gog and Magog.
Wow.
And there is a seal placed on this, which will be at the end of time. The seal will be broken, and Gog and Magog will once again flood the world.
Whoa.
Which is very gnarly.
Yeah.
But so Gog and Magog, so there's Gog Magog in this story, but Gog and Magog are these weird, sometimes human, sometimes quasi-monstrous, often sort of gigantic, like horde or tribe of like demonic barbarians. But also Gog and Magog refer to specific people and sometimes to lands they inhabit. So it's a bit confusing who, what Gog Magog are, right? Like I said, they are in the Bible as like basically they're the bad guys, and they're also in the Quran in the same way. Gog and Magog are like the guys that are on the bad side in the War of Armageddon, in the last battle. They're like the demonic hordes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Alexander sealed them away, but they come back.
Okay.
So, and like I said, it's complicated. Sometimes they appear to be one person. Sometimes it's a land. Sometimes it's a people. And they're like I said, they're in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions, and in the Bible, the Quran, and in Arthurian legend, and in Alexander legends, and other places as well. They're like the go-to bad guy. So like in the Marvel universe, right? Everything is Hydra at bottom.
Right.
And in the history of the world, everything is Gog Magog.
Okay.
There's like Satan, and then his unit is Gog Magog.
They're the army of orcs.
Yeah, like an army of orcs,
Yeah.
right? Or ogres. And ogre comes from the same root word as what?
I don't know.
Hungarian.
Really?
It's true. Hungarian.
Oh, that's great.
It's true. So maybe we're referring to the Hungarians here.
Could be.
Could be. I don't. But actually, the orc and ogre thing is different. But just Gog Magog. Okay. So the first appearance is of Magog. Gog's not here yet. Is in Genesis 10.
Okay.
Genesis 10 is, of course, the Table of Nations, right? Which is where like Noah has landed. And then it describes Noah's sons and their sons and their sons, and it divides the world up into the descendants of these various peoples, and tells you like, and the descendants of these people took to the sea, and the descendants of these people went to the desert, and so on and so forth, right? And this Table of Nations, the 70 nations, was what the ancient world looked back to for identity. And this is very important, not just Jewish cultures, not just Christian cultures, not just Islamic cultures, but pagan cultures as well. Because they shared the idea of Noah, right? Now, they called him different names, like in Gilgamesh's Untefishtim, but he's the same guy. And they had roughly the same idea of roughly the same list of sons. And so the Romans would be like, oh, yeah, well, we're descended from blah, 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 blah. And then they compare notes, and the names are different. But like, oh, yeah, here's our common ancestor.
Right.
Right? And that's really important because in the ancient world, they didn't... Modern historians think that the world is so arbitrary that people just like came up with their mythologies at random.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not true. There's a shared human experience, and people come to more or less the same conclusions given similar environments. This is why, like, there's a god of thunder that's also like the top god in most of them. Like in Hinduism, there's Indra. He's like the lord of the gods, and he has a lightning bolt and a hammer. And there's Zeus, lightning bolt, and there's Thor, lightning bolt and hammer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's over and over again. And Jupiter... because these symbols are they're natural. There is some crossover, but they also develop independently convergent evolution.
Okay.
Right. And they had a similar idea of the past. And so everyone was trying to figure out, like, well, we all believe in the Great Flood. The pagans believed in the Great Flood. The monotheists believed in the Great Flood. The Native Americans across the world, they didn't have any idea about, believed in the Great Flood. And they're all trying to trace back who's who in relation to these people. Okay. So in Genesis 10, we read, verse 2, the sons of Japheth. So Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. He said, the sons of Japheth are Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. And listeners, we are all probably sons of Japheth.
Cool.
Just letting you know. If you're a white guy that speaks an Indo-European language, the peoples of, say, the 1st century would have said, oh, you're a son of Japheth. Like you're of the tribe. Like there's 3 broad clans of the earth. Which sort of dovetail with the 3 broad races of like brownish, whitish, and blackish. And there's Japheth, Shem, and Ham, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're Japheth." Now, also, so a subset of Japheth is Magog. So just there you go. That's one of Japheth's sons. So maybe you are Gog Magog, listener.
Yikes.
That will one day, maybe all the blue-haired white people that are rampaging across the world are the Gog Magog. I don't know. The next one we get is in Ezekiel 38. It says, the Lord came to me and said, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the Lord says, I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing swords. Right? So, again, we've got Gog and Magog, and he's referencing, this is like thousands of years later and he's talking about Gog, Magog, Meshech, and Tubal, which are these sons. So what I'm saying is, at this point, thousands of years later, they're still saying, oh, you're still Meshech, you're still Tubal. And to modern ears, that sounds weird because we're like, well, but like there's been so much interbreeding, you can't possibly be one or the other. And their idea was like, well, you just like your father and then his father and then his father would eventually get back to one of these dudes. Right. So, and broadly, it would be sort of what you would think. Okay. So, we have this Gog Magog character that appears over and over again, and like as sometimes he's a giant, sometimes he's these hordes, sometimes he's whatever. Sometimes Alexander the Great fights him. Josephus identified them with the Scythians. Muslims identified Gog Magog with the Vikings. They almost always come from the north down in the story. Okay. Right? But here's the point. This is why it's so interesting that the Welsh Gog Magog is a giant, is because they carry the strain of Nephilim blood in them. Is basically the idea. Okay. Of the demon, the mixture of the women with the demons. Japheth was apparently thought to be somewhat that. And then this strain goes through Magog. Right? And so the idea is that there are people today that still have a bit of fallen angel blood in them. Okay. Which sounds crazy. I get it. But this is the story. And that this will be increased in them toward the end. Right? So we have that. There's Gog Magog. Okay. All
right, Have I checked Gog Magog off my list? Yes.
Okay, so you've checked Gog Magog.
That is 1 out of 7.
Let's talk about esoteric Hitlerism.
Ooh, okay.
So, everyone knows that like Hitler and the Nazis were into occultism. it's a common thing. It's in like Captain America and everything, the Red Skull. But a lot of people don't understand like how deep that goes.
Okay.
I've been reading. There's this book called Hitler's Monsters, which describes the occultism of the Third Reich. Mm-hmm. And so this is the book that Hitler had in his office that he used to gain power in Germany. And it's Ernst Schuertel's Magic, History, Theory, and Practice, 1923.
Ooh, who wrote it?
Ernst Schuertel.
Schuertel.
Schuertel. Magic, History. So Hitler had this book, and in Hitler's copy of the book, he's marked it up, highlighted it, he's written notes, he's studied this book. Right? And so I'm not exaggerating when I say that Hitler used magical practices to gain power. Like, this is his, like, he has all these notes in here. He's like, and this is how we will do this, and this is how you convince people, and blah, blah, blah. Here's one of the things Hitler underlined in that book. Quote, "Horror always lurks at the bottom of the magical world, and everything holy is always mixed with horror." Right. Now, Ernst Schuertel was a German man of the Weimar Republic, mm-hmm. who was a school teacher. He wrote books also, but he was a school teacher who was kicked out of being a school teacher for encouraging his kids in school to explore the advantages of male-on-male relationships.
Ooh.
And so the author of this book is a liberal, and that's my big problem with him, is that he's always like, and the Weimar Republic was good, but then it did this, and he never connects, like, but the Weimar Republic brought you the Nazis.
Right.
Like, he never connects to, like, maybe there was a problem in the Weimar Republic, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, this just came out of nowhere. So he says in the book, it may sound strange that a gay magician would be Hitler's main influence. And I was like, no, it's not strange at all. That's exactly what you would expect, is that the thing that was fake would also be gay, because it always goes together. It would only be weird that Hitler was into a homosexual sex magic book if you thought that somehow the evil on one side did not give rise to the evil on the other.
Right.
But they go together. So he also underlined such other phrases in this book, such as, quote, "Satan is the fertilizing, destroying, constructing warrior. And he who does not carry demonic seeds within him will never give birth to a new world."
This is, incidentally, this is all very New Age.
Very New Age, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, the writer of this book goes to great pains to be like, well, they use the New Age things badly, but that doesn't mean the New Age necessarily does it. And he's a lot of like here's my beef with this book. He goes through here and he talks about like, oh, the Germans, thought they could turn into werewolves, and they accused the communists of being vampires, and they thought that they were having like a werewolf versus vampire war, mm-hmm. which is weird. Indeed. And he's like, but that doesn't. He lays the blame of it on irrationality. He's like, these fringe beliefs need to be squashed out because they will give rise to this sort of irrational evil.
Right.
And my big bugbear when I was reading through this book, I was like, well, but no. Because, see, here's the problem. People need, they need a legendarium. Mm-hmm. They need like because here's the lie of modernity. The lie of modernity is that that there are objective facts.
Oh man.
And there are not objective facts. Because think about it. When narrative and story, meaning and mm-hmm. symbolism,
right,
is intrinsic to the world, and it must be, because when you say like, when you say just give me the facts, even the facts that you pick as relevant, you're doing because you're deciding what's relevant to whatever narrative you have in your head.
Okay.
Even if it's just I'm only describing the material because the material world is all that there is. That's the narrative you have in your head. And so then you pick out those. You're like, it is black. It is hardened. It was hard to the touch. It's made of metal or whatever.
So you're sort of saying there are objective facts, but we're unable to handle them without smearing them with a lot of subjective things.
No, there's no objective facts at all.
Yeah, there are. Like, that rock exists. It's an objective fact. It's there. But as soon as we start talking about it, we get all weird.
No, because your narrative, you've brought in your narrative to it, which is that the rock is a separate entity. Why? Like an alien brain that came down, maybe they would process the world and think of all the rocks as one thing.
Okay, so the only objective fact of reality is a big smear of material? I mean, there's got to be some sort of objective fact for you to pin anything on here.
No, your consciousness is what determines this from that.
Okay.
Right? It's like if you were I've used this before, but if you were a fly, if you had the brain of a fly and you could stand on any surface, the distinction between floor and wall might not be there for you.
Right.
Right. So we say there's the wall and there's the floor, but if we were fly beings, we might not think of them. You might not be like, it's an objective fact that there are floors and walls. Mm-hmm. You'd be like, no, they're the same. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's always, this is the thing, we're so drenched in modernity that we think that the observer can be pulled away from the universe and just describe it.
Okay.
And that can't happen. And we know that in physics now. Like, you can't take the observer out of the experiment. He's always influencing the experiment in like a real, tangible way that makes the results different.
Right. Even
in like spooky ways. You know, like the double slit experiment and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's the observer is intrinsic to the thing. And like, what would it even mean? Like when people talk about before life evolved, the Earth was such and such and so and so, or the solar system was such and such and so and so. It's like, what does that even mean? What would a universe be with nothing to think about? Like, if there's nothing to observe it, is it there? Because you can't verify it's there unless you observe it. Someone has to go there and look at it and be like, yeah, it's there. But before you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what does this have to do with esoteric Hitlerism?
Because the guy is saying that these fringe beliefs in his book, he's going, these fringe beliefs like world ice theory, which was something the Nazis were proponents of, which was that the moon was made of ice and that the whole solar system had been birthed when like a big giant comet of ice fell into a giant star or something crazy. And he said, and his point in this book, and this is why I think maybe materialism and people are so against what they call woo-woo thinking, because they believe it will lead to basically Nazism.
Right.
Because they think, oh, well, irrationality is how we got there. And like the Germans were extremely predisposed for whatever reason. A lot of people that he cites in the book think it's just intrinsic to the German mind, and it may be,
right,
to think in like magical terms, or because the Germans during the Weimar, they were into seances. I mean, the English were too at the time, frankly, this whole spiritist movement. Mm-hmm. They were into seances, they were into ghosts, they were into psychic readings, they were into Atlantis. There's a quote in the book that said every German of the time had one foot in Atlantis, longing for a better fatherland. I mean, they're just all of, and so the author of this book was like, well, see, this is why it's so important that we make a distinction between real science and pseudoscience, and real facts and like fake news.
Okay.
And my point, and I was thinking about that, and I said, yeah, but This is the idea that you have objective facts, but really your narrative in saying that we need to just be is based on, if you analyze it, it's the narrative that if we talk about anything significant, we will become Nazis.
Right.
So you're already applying a narrative filter to what you consider facts.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is that you're saying there is no spirit. And so then you're saying, and then you see how, so you're already you can't avoid putting a narrative structure on what you say. There's no such thing as like just giving me the objective facts.
So in his mind, it's important that we all be pure materialists. Otherwise, we'll become Nazis.
Correct. And
Okay.
a lot of people, I think, have this feeling, even if they've never articulated it, because this is why there's such a freak out over like fake news, quoted,
Mm-hmm.
and like conspiracy theories, and this is why they think they're dangerous,
Ah,
because they view these like weird things as like giving rise to weird beliefs that then give rise to like a Führer.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe that if we just stick to rationality, what they so-called, we will get to the Star Trek universe, where we're all in harmony on a big starship roaming the space. We wear nice suits, and we play the violin after our shift.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Right. That's what they... And so... But I think what you're seeing is, my point to this guy, and to you, listeners, is that the human mind rejects the lack of modernity and rejects the lack of the attempt at a lack of narrative, and instead will and as evidenced by our increasing desire for all sorts of fantasy, like, well, we took that away, now we're really into Star Wars, and like we have to and there are guys that like know everything about Star Wars and like the Force, and they model themselves after the Jedi,
Yeah.
or Hogwarts. And like there are groups now that get together and read Harry Potter as though it's a holy text every Sunday.
Right, because they have to have you took away like modernity took away all the spirit that people need. And so they're like, "Oh, J.K. Rowling gave us some spirit. We'll go with that."
Or like they're going like Fusroda and all about Skyrim.
Right.
Or Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And so the human mind is and it's searching for like a legendarium, of like a real magical history.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because even Star Wars is a long, long time ago. It's futuristic, but it's it's a magical history, right? And these sorts of, you always have to set your fantasies in this magical history. And for us, that becomes the Middle Ages.
Right.
The time of Gog Magog.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the sword and the shield and stuff.
Yep.
And it becomes the and we even call it the Dark Ages. Like that's the dark abyss of the unconscious, where these things come from. And so you have all this stuff, and they're like, well, if we go down that road, we will also become Nazis, because they say, look, the Nazis were into New Ageism. The Nazis were into, and that's true. And I would caution the New Age people, like, you think you're so different from the Nazis. They have very similar beliefs.
Yeah.
Very similar. They believed in chakras. Like, why do you think they used a swastika? Because they were really into Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really into, like, were they Hindu? No. Did
Yep.
they borrow a lot? Are you Hindu? No. You're just talking about chakras. You're also not Hindu. You're as Hindu as they are. And they were using and so, or when you use like the Buddhist wheel, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like you could just easily imagine that they could have very easily decided on the Buddhist wheel instead of the swastika. It's just happenstance. I mean, both the communists and the Nazis funded expeditions in search of the lost Buddhist city of Shambhala. They were, I mean, they're very into this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and so people are like, well, this is, the fear is that if you go down these nonsense paths, quote unquote nonsense paths, and you talk about astrology, which the Nazis were very into, ladies, I'm sorry. They all had court astrologers. Himmler had an astrologer. Goebbels had an astrologer. They all were into this stuff. And I've talked about astrology, but and they're like, well, if we go down this road, we're going to become irrational, and irrational leads to violence, and violence leads to. This is why they always frame They always frame things they don't like in terms of phobias, in terms of mental illness, because it's not rational.
Right.
See, it's not rational to be if you have that, it's some sort of mental illness. If you were a rational being, you would realize it was fine, and then because you're not rational, you're dangerous.
Right.
And my point when I was reading this book, and I was thinking, yeah, but the human mind rejects this, and it rejects it because it doesn't ring true. Because we find ourselves in a universe that is magical. There's lots of crazy stuff that is completely outlandish that it could exist. And then you wonder, like, well, what's really going on? And so the mind keeps casting back, looking for, because it knows there has to be some sort of transcendent origin. And so it invents that if it doesn't have it, and it tries to make it up. And it's like, well, there was Sauron and the orcs and the old kings of Gondor, or that there is a secret castle of wizards, or that, you know, the Star Wars was real, or something like that, right?
There's tunnels under the mall where there's
tunnels
people.
Under the mall.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, I was like, Gog Magog, what if that's supposed to be, like, that legendarium is supposed to be the thing that we go to? Like, that is necessary. And so would we be in this spot if Christianity had not abandoned its legendarium and mythical past? And was like, and they were bold enough to say, listen, way back long ago, there were actual titans. Yeah. And because in the Greek Bible, they translate Nephilim as titans, because they're the same idea. Yep. The titans were real. They were heavenly beings that fell and became evil. And they made war on the heavens, just like they did in Greek mythology. And so God wiped them out with a flood. But some of their bloodline exists, and that became a problem. And their bloodline started to recoalesce, and that became giants. And there were giants in the land, and that's why the Israelites went to war with the Canaanites, who were giants. And then those people fled, and that's why Goliath had 6 fingers, and because the 6-finger thing. And you know what's interesting? The Native Americans also talked about giants that ruled over them and were cannibalistic, and they had 6 fingers. Isn't that weird? Funny that. And there's even pictures found of skeleton, big hands with 6 fingers. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's fraudulent, but there sure are a lot of them. And then. And what if they were like, and then there actually is like a demonic horde of like, and we should, instead of like this identity issues, like these race relations, a lot of it is so much like, who am I and what are we? And you try to cobble them together in this way that is artificial. And you're like, it's all white people. And then, but like, white people aren't a group. Like, there's too many. Like, that is me. That is people in Russia. That's people in Kazakhstan. Are white with blue eyes. That's Irish. That's so many people. That's too much, and we don't have enough. Or like black. Like that black only works in America, and it doesn't work as people from Africa immigrate, because the Somalians are having a lot of clashes with African Americans. Yeah, because they're not the same group. Black is too big. Like, all of Africa is not one group.
And we have Darwin to thank for this dumb stuff.
Yeah, we do, because he demythologized.
It's like this obsessive materialistic genetic determinism stuff. And before that, people were, logically and helpfully distinguished by their family lines, their geography, their culture, their belief system, useful metrics. And there was a lot more variety, and it was okay that we were different, right? Right. And then Darwin comes in with biological determinism and all this stuff, and then we have to level the whole world and make everybody the same, and that just causes all this conflict and confusion. Now we have black, white, brown.
We're all chimpanzees or something.
All hate each other, and Darwin gave us this problem.
He did, because he took away the legendarium. Like I said before, the ancient world, monotheistic and pagan, all had sort of a shared history. There was a universal history. And people, you're like, what? No, they didn't. No, 100% they did. When the Greek pagans would encounter like the pagans in Ireland or the pagans in Egypt, they had a sense that they would be like, okay, let's examine their pantheon and see where they match up. And they'd be like, oh, and they always did, not one for one, but they were like, okay, they have a thunder god, right? And he's the king. And these are two gods, they've merged into one. Okay, that's fine. Let's make room for them at the altar. And like, oh, here's their virgin goddess, right? Ours is Venus. Theirs is somebody else. Mm-hmm. They all had the same, because they were. And then they'd be like, and what's your history and your roots? And they would talk about it. And they go back like, yeah, and this is how we came from Untafishtim. And they'd be like, oh, here's how we came from Untafishtim. And then they'd go to the Middle East and they'd be like, here's how we came from Noah. And they'd be like, oh, Noah and the Untafishtim are the same, right? And they'd say, okay, right? And so there was this shared universe, but this universal, like, sort of legendarium mythical past that they had different takes on, but they all saw themselves as fitting into it. And this is why, like Jonathan Peugeot talked about this on a recent thing, which got me, I was reading about esoteric Hitlerism, and I was like, yeah, maybe this is why we have this problem. Because everyone in the past was trying to, forced or not, fit themselves into this universal story, which is why the Britons are like, well, we are connected also, because we had a king from the old world, Troy, right? Yep. And he defeated Gog Magog. Mm-hmm. Same idea, that he defeated the Titans too. And then, all of them have this story. Definitely all the peoples of Europe, but also a lot of the peoples of the East have this various story of and connecting them back somehow.
Okay, so you're saying the importance of the history of the kings of Britain, or one of the important things about it, is that it connects the people of Britain to the universal history.
Right, and they were all trying to do that. And what we have now is the opposite. Because we while we claim that we're globalists, we're also saying it's wrong for like us to try and find connections with the Apaches, because that's cultural appropriation. And everything should be siloed.
Right.
And actually, in the past, they were not siloed at all. They were saying we all have different takes on the same story. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they were trying. They were trying to figure out how they all fit together. And this is like the Hungarians. They couldn't figure out from their lineage where they were from. They were like, are we Shem? Are we Ham? Are we Japheth? And they had their language didn't quite fit in, and they were like, I don't know. So they eventually came up with, we were born to the fourth son of Noah. It doesn't talk about that was born on the ark. And he was a bit of a monster. He was born in the abyss and the chaos. And we're a bit monstrous and can be a bit upsetting sometimes, and we're sorry about that, but here we are. And that's how the Hungarians thought, and that's why they were identified as ogres. Right? Oh, so, man. Like, all this stuff, and so people are always trying to... So my point is, the idea that if you're quote-unquote irrational, one, that you will become Nazis or something equivalent. Mm-hmm. One, you cannot be rational the way they think, because you cannot be purely objective. That's a myth. There's an infinite amount of things you would identify as facts, and you can't say all of them because you don't have an infinite amount of time. So you select the ones that you're going to say, and when you do that selection process is a narrative forming process.
Gotcha.
Because you're saying, here's the facts that are important. And this is what happens in the news, because they say, like, they'll talk endlessly about some one incidence of white on black racism, mm-hmm. and ignore hundreds of the other way around.
Right.
Because, and they're not lying per se, because the thing that they talk about did happen. They just ignored the other facts that happened. Mm-hmm. And this is why people can come up with all kinds of narratives on the world that are all based in quote unquote facts.
Right.
And you're like, well, we have the right view, and they're like, ours is based on objective facts, and like ours is too, and people can't see how those can both be true because they believe in objective reality.
Right.
But that's not the case. Every subjectivity and objectivity go together, right? And so I think that realizing that, and then instead of, if we could retake up the ancient legendarium, because that gives people what they need. They need a magical past of heroism and great deeds, and fighting against great evils, whether it's Sauron, whether it's the Dragonborn, whether it's Voldemort, whether it's the Sith, or any of your takes on it that come up in popular culture. They need this, and they do. That's why people dwell on it, and they like get sucked into like all the lore of like Star Wars or whatever. They get sucked into it so hard because the human mind needs that. And my point is, we have that.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, and it's probably more based in reality than whatever you're making up, because there are probably actually giants of some kind, right? And I know that's a bit far-fetched for the modern mind, but get over it. Maybe if you took that and you're like, here it is. Here's the thing that you can obsess over and get in your lore about. Maybe that is the proper channel of this esoteric bent of the human mind, which seeks this legendary past. It prevents a lot of this New Ageism, which can have bad effects, and it solves the identity crisis of the race relations in America, because it gives you like, here's where your roots trace back to, is these people from Noah, from the Great Flood.
That's super cool.
I know.
I love this. So I got a personal little anecdote about this. And you've just helped me understand why it was such. So when I remember when first time I read the History of the Kings of Britain, I loved that book. I loved it. It presents itself as a history of how Britain came to be in its modern form. It's got King Arthur in there. It's got Merlin. It has giants and dragons and all this stuff, and it's just presented very like this is what happened. And I am mostly of British extraction, and I really connected with that. And I thought, this is so cool. Is it true? I don't know. But it almost didn't matter. Like, that wasn't really the important question. The important question was, this is the cool mythical history of my people. And I really enjoyed that. Like, I really got a lot out of reading that, just satisfaction of I'm not just this modern thing floating around, right? And it's like, yeah, I have my faith, and that gives me a foundation, but I don't have a history, right? So, like, I have a history of faith, and that what I'm a part of, but I don't have a personal, like, a familial history that goes back very far. Like, I got like 3 generations. My people come from California. It's not very gratifying. That doesn't give me good. You
can't connect
feelings.
Yourself to the human story that way.
Right. But when I read that book, I connected myself to the human story. Perfectly put. I connected myself to the human story because I'm, of British extraction. And I'm, everybody's got some access to this, I guess. But it's just, do we care that it exists or not?
Yeah. And I think people do care, but they don't know that it's there.
Right.
They don't know that this is like, and so my thing would be, people are like, is it true? And I say, well, it may be a lot truer than you imagine. Like, they used to say that Troy wasn't real at all. It was just made up. And then they found the ruins of Troy. Yeah. Right. And so was there a King Brutus who was a descendant of Aeneas? Maybe. And these things line up in such ways that like the guy that found, like, Constantine, right? He comes from England. He's an undisputed English king, and his mother is Helen, who is reasonably considered a Trojan. She comes from the same region, right?
Constantine's mom was Helen of Troy.
Yeah, and so Helen of Troy like returns.
Yeah,
bringing with him the kings of Britain.
Yeah,
to found Constantinople, basically like 100 feet from the ruins of Troy, but they didn't know it at the time.
Right.
They didn't know where Troy was, and they found Constantine, and like, then when they found it, they're like, did you realize that like 100 feet outside of Constantinople / Istanbul is the ruins of Troy? I'm like, really? And they just refounded it, and then it's like the new Troy was made, and so it's like this bringing together. It's like the story works itself out anyway.
That's beautiful, man.
I know, and this stuff happens, and so Jonathan Peugeot was talking about that, and I was like, and so it was a way, Albion, England was the edge of the world, and so it was a way of bringing the edge of the world to the center and bringing the center to the edge, and so it's this unifying thing. And then I realized, but then what happened is we discovered there was more world. And that was a big problem. And I think that kicked off the Enlightenment more than anything. Like that was really the fuel for the Enlightenment fire, because people were like, they had a worldview and it encompassed the whole thing. Everyone had this shared history. And then we're like, oh, but there's another half of the planet. And that isn't included yet. And we didn't really know about it. And I think what we're going through right now is we're working on how to include the Americas into the universal story, because we haven't yet. They feel disjointed. And that's why America and the United States of America is this sort of gargoyle-y country that is weird, and it brings in a bunch of different peoples, and then it's trying to figure out what it is, and in the process it shoots a lot, and it eats a lot of hamburgers. And but no one can quite say like, oh, and people are like, is America a nation? Is it an idea? Is it no one is quite sure what, because we have become sort of the monstrous gargoyle of that which does not fit.
Ooh. Right?
Because and this is why people are always like looking back to the old country, because they'd worked it out. They'd worked out a system, and then like, oh, but now we have this whole thing. And like, how do you connect the Americas to the universal history, right? And that will happen narratively, I believe, in time, but it takes a while to work out, and it's messy in the process. And Mormonism was a first attempt at that, I think.
Oh.
A first pass, because they were like, the Garden of Eden was here, you see.
Gotcha.
It's in Missouri. It was in Missouri, and the Israelites got on a boat, and the lost tribe came here, and that's the Native Americans, and that's our connection, right? And so they were subconsciously, people are doing this without even really knowing what they're doing. They're trying to work out how does America fit back in? How can we tie that back to the flood? How can we tie that back to the thing? And there's some easy gives, like the Native Americans all have this. Every single one of them, without exception, talks about in the past we were ruled over by a race of giants that were cannibals and had 6 fingers. Like, right. It's weird. And then you're like, well, that's also in the Bible, right? It's also in. I mean, that's what Thor fighting the frost giants is about. And because they were the cannibalistic giants, and then Thor had to go out to defeat them and bring peace to the world. And then which is the same idea as the Titans, which were always chewing on the flesh of the people, and they had to be destroyed, right? It's the same idea. And so I think that the identity crisis of America could be solved, perhaps, if we were bold enough to reclaim the universal legendarium like given to us in Christianity. Like, here's your Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Here it is.
And it really happened.
There's fights with, it really happened. There's fights with giants.
Yeah.
You're part of it. It goes back to your lineage, right? Whoever your people are, they're involved. Even And people are always like, but that's always Western. Like, no, it's not. There's a strand of this that goes through Ethiopia and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and the Ethiopian connection to Moses, because Moses had an Ethiopian wife, and the Ethiopian Jews, as it were, like they're a real thing.
Yep.
Like it connects down into sub-Saharan Africa also, and it connects over to India and Asia. Like this story goes over there in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were bold enough, but see, Christians got so cowed by materialism. They're like, well, you can't have Christianity and throw out the cosmic worldview. Like,
yeah,
like we'll have Jesus, but just toss out Genesis.
Yeah,
it doesn't work, and it doesn't work because Christianity is also about cycles, though they've tried to downplay that. And the end, the eschaton, when Christ returns, has to look like the beginning for the two ends to meet, because the circle wraps around, right? And so the primordial chaos has to return for the new founding of the new Eden.
Okay.
Does that make so? Like, this is why it has to come apart again, because it has to come apart. The chaos, the Gog and Magog seal has to be broken. The demons have to rush back upon the earth to get back to the place where it's refounded. Like it has to wrap back around for the completion of the circle. And this is why the end looks so much like the beginning in the Bible. Like this is why the book of Enoch, this feels like you're reading Revelations in the past. And this is why also we begin to see the rebirth of monsters as we get closer to the end. I don't know how close we are. We may be a long time out still, but we're getting closer every day. And like in the past, what did the pagans say? In the ancient past, we fought with the monsters, the giants, and those that were like mixed up, like the chimeras, the centaurs, and the minotaurs, and the goat and the satyrs. And you see now, the beginning. Like there was just an article the other day of they've mixed in a lab chimpanzees with human beings and made a little embryo, and then they killed it.
Yeah.
But it was a viable embryo.
Muffins was very upset about this week. She read about it and
she
should be upset about it.
But what's going to happen is you're going to see things like this is one thing Peugeot said that I agree with wholeheartedly. You're going to see the rebirth of things that have not been seen in thousands of years.
Yeah.
The rebirth. You're at the age of the rebirth of monsters. And like people are like, this is, you look at all these things in like the marginalia of like medieval manuscripts, and you see like these monstrous people, and then you're like, that's all ridiculous. And then you walk outside and there are these people with like, they're half naked with nipple rings, wearing leather and pink hair. I'm like, it's right there. It's already coming back. What are you talking about? Like the Gog and Magog are returning. And like, I don't know how long I don't know if this is the final one or if this is a sub-cycle. But it's happening. Like it's before your eyes, and you may live to see like a half human, half horse, like another that they put together in a lab, another centaur or something. And you think like, well, is that how the centaurs were made in the past? Is that because I talked about, that maybe they had technology and lost it, and they used it for evil, and that's why God wiped out the world, because they'd become so corrupt that they were this, So there's that. But I don't think that's how I think you could solve it, is you re-embrace the legendarium that actually exists, the true one that solves the meaning crisis, and it gives people roots and actual identities that matter. Like these Noahic identities.
Yep.
But that's probably not going to happen. And so I think that's why we're headed toward an Argentinian economic collapse.
We're just ticking off the list here, buddy. We got fourth turnings is the only thing that hasn't been addressed.
And the Argentinian economic collapse was what we're headed towards. and so I was thinking, well, the solution's probably not going to happen. So what do I tell people to do instead? And there's this book called Surviving the Economic Collapse by a guy that lived through the 2001 Argentinian economic collapse, which if you're not familiar, before the 2000s, Argentina was basically looked at sort of like Canada. It was a nice, very developed country.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, people are like, yeah, Argentina's like the Canada of the South, you know? And then overnight, it became a third world country because of this collapse. And he goes through like what actually mattered in that. And I won't spend too much time on it, but his advice was the following. 1, expect a lot more crime to occur very rapidly because people will no longer be able to afford things that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Your previously safe neighborhood will no longer be safe. You should learn self-defense and you should learn firearms. So there's number 1 thing he says. Number 2, you should learn defensive driving, which I think we've already seen. He said there will be lots of carjackings, hordes of people trying to stop you in the street. You need to take a defensive driving class, he says, learn how to escape such situations. Then he said, storing food and stuff will be a thing, and worrying about he said, do not trust that your clean water will still be clean.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes into what I thought was interesting. This was the takeaway for me. He said, because everyone's thinking like, oh, well, and I have been guilty of this too, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but this is my counter to myself. Maybe you're wrong. Is that he said, expect all forms of digital transactions to be unavailable.
Ooh.
He said when it happened, the banks turned off the credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
The ATMs shut down. So he said, so that if you're banking on Bitcoin, maybe don't bank on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said cash is king in the immediate aftermath.
Well, all the Bitcoin guys, and I'm very sympathetic to this argument, would say you can't kill Bitcoin because you can't kill the internet.
I agree.
But maybe you can kill the internet.
But you can kill the internet. At least locally.
Yeah.
At least locally. Like in the collapse, you may not have access to what you think you will.
The internet could probably function without America at this point. I'm not sure about that, but
yeah.
Once you get all the satellite networks up and running, America could go dark and the internet could keep on rolling without us.
Right. So maybe you will have, I'm not saying your Bitcoin vanishes off your wallet, but maybe you don't have access to trade with it. Or maybe the people you want to trade it for don't have access to take it.
Right.
So just be aware of that. In the case of he said cash is king, but cash runs out, and then 4 or 5 months people start hoarding it and they don't have any more.
Right.
Then people do start trading precious metals.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, if you be careful about having gold and silver coins, because if you try to trade one of those, people are like, oh, that guy has some more of those.
Right.
He's got some more of those. Let's follow him. So he actually recommended that you have investments in gold and silver jewelry, because then it's just like, oh, I'm in a bad strait and I have to pawn off grandma's necklace.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like you hoarded gold beforehand.
Ooh, that's good.
Right? If it looks like you hoarded precious metals before the collapse, you become a target.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was very interesting, like points of what you might go read that book. Unfortunately, it's not on Kindle. It's not on. I couldn't find any legit.
Do you know the name of the author offhand?
It's some Spanish name.
Yeah, okay, that'll help. I'll find
it's called
it.
Surviving the Economic Collapse. I think it had an F in it.
I'll put that in the show notes. I'll track it
Right.
down.
And then the 4 turnings was I'm trying to hit these last because I know it's been a while. The 4 turnings was, I don't think it's possible because of the nature of cycles that we will turn this around. The 4 turnings is this idea, it was popularized in this book of the same name, that history goes in these 80-year blocks, which is roughly the span of a human life. And the idea is that people try the same things over and over again, and they don't work.
Yeah.
And so there's this, there are these 20-year blocks that these things are in. I believe it's called founding, individualism or something like that, unraveling, and then crisis every 20 years. And he charts back and he says, America does this right on schedule. When he wrote this book, he was like, the last one we had was, the last crisis was World War II. And then if 80 years before that was the Civil War, and 80 years before that was the Revolutionary War, plus or minus 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And then 80 years before that was like the French and Indian or something, or not French and Indian, the thing before that. And then, so now the criticism of that is like, well, aren't you leaving out some stuff like World War I? You just skip over it, This sort of, the idea of spring, summer, and fall.
Yep.
Of a civilization, and people are like, this is just myth making. But my point is, people turn to the fourth turning as like they latch onto it. It's become hugely popular because the human mind needs that.
Yeah.
And so trying to put it down, it keeps reoccurring in multiple ways, right? But anyway, it may be that this has to happen because if you look back in the last, so if you go 80 years, and it was in World War II, and then 80 years back, Civil War, and then 80 years back, Revolutionary War, and then 80 years, we're coming up on the next 80 years, which would be 2028. Right? And then we're right in the crisis block that he predicted when he wrote this book in like 95.
Yep.
Began 2008. Which isn't that it did in fact happen, that we had the financial crisis. We called it the crisis in 2008. And he predicted that. He said, right on schedule, right here will be this block of time will unravel.
So the unraveling started in 2008, and then the crisis.
No. The unraveling began in the 80s.
Okay.
We're in the crisis period.
Okay.
It unravels from 1988 to 2008, which I think it did. Society began to fray.
Yeah.
And its shared assumptions began to come apart. And then you hit a crisis point in the last 20 blocks. And this is why life is it's a little, people are like, the boomers had it so easy. They could work at a gas station and afford a house. And that's true. They lived in the era of the founding. So like the old America died with World War II.
Yep.
And pre-World War II America was very different than post. Just like pre-Civil War America was very different than post-Civil War America. And so we established, this is why we talk about the Nazis so much. And and we're so worried about becoming them again, because this America was founded on the defeat of the Nazis in World War II, and this America is coming to an end.
Right.
And we're grappling with that. We're grappling with that as we approach the end of this cycle, which will end in 7 years. It's over. Probably in a big crisis. Every one other of the big crisis points of America has been marked by a large war, right? I don't know what that will look like. Maybe it's war with China. Maybe because the Chinese, I hate to tell you guys, they've in their internal politics, they say that they consider war with America inevitable.
Yeah.
They say that, like, when they talk amongst themselves, they're like, we will go to war with America at some point. They just consider it a given. So that will be upsetting for all. If it happens. Maybe it's an internal war. Maybe society breaks down to the point where maybe it's both at the same time. I don't know, right? But the crisis point that began in 2008 is and it lasts for 20 years. We have the COVID, we have the Donald Trump thing. It's just crisis after crisis after crisis for 20 years that culminates like the culminating World War II was the end of a 20-year block, more or less, that began with the Great Depression.
Right.
The Great Depression, and then this thing, and then there were all these things in the middle, and then the World War II, and then new world, new order, right? And so we will talk about the Nazis and obsess about them for a little bit more, and worried about if there's a secret Nazi behind our gates, because we're grappling with the boomers, which started this block, are coming to an end, and their mythology and worldview of what we are is coming to an end. But they're trying to save it, because everyone always tries to save it at the end. They say, well, they're trying to still see the same things, but then this will fall apart as the turning comes to an end, and we have a crisis that will probably last 4 years, because most of our wars of this nature last about 4 years. So if it begins in 2028, plan on this being over by 2032, and you live in a new America now.
Sweet.
Probably vastly different. But in the meantime, you can prepare by the Argentinian economic collapse models, and you can maybe stave off a new version of SJW esoteric Nazism by resorting to the true legendarium and universal history of Gog and Magog. There you go.
That was just beautifully tied together. And I guess occult lawfare was in the beginning, right? With the
what now?
Occult lawfare. That was the first segment.
Yeah,
right?
that didn't really fit. See, I can never fit that in.
Yeah.
I don't. One day I'm gonna crack the sovereign citizen nut.
Right.
But I've tried, and it's just so weird. It's so weird. But the thing is that it works sometimes, which is what I don't understand.
Yeah.
It doesn't work often. Most of the time when a guy gets into the judge and he's talking about not paying alimony and he starts screaming about admiralty law, it doesn't work. But like one time out of every 50, the judge is like, yeah, good point. And then and I don't understand. And like good point in a way where the judge is like runs from the bench and is like, I can't handle this. And he leaves. And I don't understand what's going on. But there's something, the Lex Mercatoria thing is a real problem.
Is this going to be the thing that drives you over the edge?
I think so. That may be the hill I die on is sovereign citizen stuff.
Well, we'll watch out for that.
I'm just saying, if I was a sovereign citizen, what I'd be saying right now to you is I'd say admiralty law is about the seas, right?
Right.
Holy See. And you go, what? What are you talking about? That's because there'll be some guy, he makes some points, and you're like, that's interesting. And then he says something like that, and you're like,
Yours is a lonely road to walk.
Mine is a lonely road to walk. But, you know, maybe I'm part Nephilim, and that's my curse.
I mean, you're a tall guy.
I'm not a giant, though.
Well, fractionally.
Yeah.
You don't have to be rich to be my girl. You don't have to be cool to rule my world. In love will take you to side I'm more compatible with. I just want your extra time and your you got to not talk dirty, baby, if you wanna impress me. You can't be too flirty, mama. I know how to undress me. I want to be